call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Mrs. Lynn? Here. Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Present.
Mr. Bean?
Here.
Mr. Coffey?
Here.
Mrs. Stiff?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Stand for the pledge.
Halt. Right, face. Pulse. Colors. Present. Arms.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Right, face. Forward. March.
Thank you. Now we have on the agenda any public comments.
We don't have any, Mr. Edmond.
Thank you.
No.
I motion to move item 7, recognition and awards, after item 5, consent agenda.
A second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve? Oh, no.
No, that's right, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda A through D?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean? Yes. Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Now we turn it over to our superintendent for recognitions and awards.
Sure. So if Mr. Hallahan can come up and start us off. It's so nice to have recognition of students tonight.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight it is our pleasure to honor 12 JTHS student musicians who have been selected to Illinois Music Education Association District 1 Band, Choir, and Orchestra. The students auditioned in October by submitting a video containing short musical compositions and other performance requirements. Each year, thousands of students audition for the ILMEA ensembles, and being selected to participate is a tremendous honor, showing not only their amazing musical talent, but also a commitment to their craft. It's my pleasure to introduce the Joliet Central musicians who are recognized. For band, Joy Kipkieni, under the direction of Mr. Don Stimson. For choir, Micah Gabriel, under the direction of Mr. Stephen Piter. And for orchestra, Michael Del Rio, under the direction of Mr. Peter Lipari.
And for the West Campus, your name is called, please come up. Phoebe Cellino for clarinet, Derek Neal for trombone, Elizabeth Wellman for trumpet, along with director, Mr. Eric Wellman. For choir, we have Peyton Frazier for soprano, 2. Caitlin Gibson for alto, 2. You guys can go and say. Xenia Manning for alto 1, and Caitlin Ruddy for soprano 1. And their director is Mr. Tim DeBoer. And then for orchestra, we have Lucas Hobbs, double bass, and Reed Hogan, tuba, under the direction of Mr. Peter Lipari. Congratulations.
Degree? Okay.
Then we also have some district recognition tonight, and so we have 3 student ambassadors representing Central and West. And if you weren't aware, yesterday was National School Board Appreciation Day. And so we have some students here who want to share their stories and what they're thankful for and help us celebrate and thank our Board of Education.
Good evening, JTHS Board of Education. I am Kennedy Doris, and I am a student at Joliet West High School.
My name is Braden Brophy, and I'm also a student at Joliet West High School.
Good evening. I'm Delilah Myers, and I go to Joliet West. Not Joliet Central. I'm sorry.
To recognize the outstanding efforts of the nearly 6,000 elected school board members throughout the state, November 15th of each year is designated as School Board Members Day in Illinois. School Board Members Day is an opportunity to build community awareness and understanding about the essential role locally elected Board of Education members assume in a representative democracy.
Many people do not realize that school board members in Illinois are not paid for their service. School board members volunteer countless hours of their time to serve students, parents, and community, and they work hard continually to support and improve our schools. This is why it's so important that we recognize our school board members tonight.
As part of our thanks, we would like to tell you all about our experiences at Central and West because we are grateful for our schools and we know that your leadership makes our positive educational experience possible.
Like I've stated before, hello, I am Kennedy Doris. I am a senior at Joliet West High School. I'm also a student ambassador, and I'm also captain of the Joliet West speech team, which is a very successful team who I am lucky to have headed by our coach, Kristen Blake. She has been an integral role of all 4 years of me being at Joliet West High School. In addition, I am also the president of the Black Lives Matter Club. I am also a part of the National Honor Society, the French Honor Society, as well as the Math Honor Society, which is also known as Mu Alpha Theta. I've also participated in TNN, which is broadcasted to all of Joliet West High School, as well as being a part of track and field and GI. I say all of this to say that because of you guys, I have been lucky enough to participate in all of these vast amount of clubs that we have at Joliet West High School. And unfortunately, I do not have all the time in the world to go and act on all those interests, but I'm lucky enough to have these opportunities for me to go and later on and explore these interests later on in my career. Thank you.
To reintroduce myself, my name is Braden Brophy. I'm also a senior at Joliet West and a student ambassador. I've had a great high school experience. I've been happy with my grades. I figured out how to navigate the school a lot better since freshman year, and I even made it through e-learning. Since freshman year, though, Joliet West has become more and more my home away from home. At West, I'm involved in Key Club, National Honor Society, and Kristen Blake's speech team, captained by Kennedy Doris. I've also been in various drama department productions. Previously, I've been involved in choir, musical, fall play, group interpretation, all since freshman year. Each of these activities brought with it its challenges and memorable moments, and many have become large parts of my life. Our school's atmosphere really allows for anyone to pursue their interests through so many clubs and extracurricular activities. I'm so grateful to be in a place where these activities and communities have been made available to me. Many of the people and experiences I've encountered at Joliet West have helped me to find where I belong and what I want to do. If I had not had the ability to participate in these activities, I'm sure my high school experience wouldn't be filled with the accomplishments, relationships, and real lessons that I'll take with me. I want to thank the entire board for everything you do to provide me with community and opportunity.
I'm Delilah, and I'm a freshman at Central. And so far this year, my school has been so welcoming. There's a wide selection of clubs and activities, so it's really easy to get involved. I'm personally in speech team, and it's a great community to be in. It's very well run, and there's a big space for us to work in. I like how any issues at our school, there's quickly attention to try to solve it. Like when there were issues with tardiness and fighting, there was a quick effort to try to fix the problem. And I'm proud to go to a school where my learning environment is safe and healthy and good. Thank you so much.
In conclusion, on behalf of Joliet Township High School students, thank you for your service. We have a small token of appreciation we would now like to present to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's okay. I see my son next week.
Yeah, yeah.
You did a great job in the freshman.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to take a little recess and come out to greet you guys.
Good job, very well. Text Tom, he said, it's an oven.
Good, thank you. Nice to meet you. I think I met you. Homecoming. Oh, yeah. Yes, I was there with my wife. Yes.
is our educational service update. And our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Diane McDonald, will present the information to the board.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm excited to share some good news about what's been going on in our classrooms. And I just want to say to the board that good things have been happening in our classrooms with our students and our teachers. And what I'm capturing in these few slides is not everything that's been going on in our classrooms, but it's a small picture of the good things that have been going on this school year. So I want to start off with our IPR. So our IPR2 was released November 3rd, and that's our interim progress report number 2. That's where our teachers post their grades, and they also provide comments. These are our grades broken down by the district, by campuses, and then I also broke it down by core areas for you. But I want to give you some updates because things change really fast. So I pulled the grades as of today, this morning, and our average for the district is 76.1% A's, B's, and C's, so it's gone up. English is at 72.5, math 68.1, science 74.3, and social science 77.1. So we're seeing increases in all areas. The overall for A's, B's, and C's at Central is 73.1 as of today, and Joliet West is 79%. So we've seen an increase in students, in our students doing, earning grades of A's, B's, and C's in our classroom. The reason why I give you a breakdown of grades between 59% to 40%, that gives us a gauge of where our students are who are close to passing. And that's important to know as we wrap up the semester and prepare for winter credit recovery, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But we target students in a percentage between 50 and 59% to see if we could remediate their learning. So it's important for us as a district to monitor how many grades are actually in that range, and then everything else below. So you can see we have, and I can give you an update. I broke that down for today. So we have 3,200 grades between 59.9 and 40.1%. A shift in the grades from 40% to 10.1% is 1,600. And then there are 700 grades between 10% and 0. So just keep in mind that a freshman would have probably 6 grades, and an upperclassman would have 5. So you multiply that by 6,000 kids, that's a lot of grades. So when we're talking about grades, it's like every student will have 5 or 6 grades per person. Well, you think 500 or 600 per student. So that's where we are right now. And compared to, not last year, but the year before, we are on target. So we are comparing to how we did pre-COVID, which is a great, it's an accolade to what our teachers are doing with our students in the classroom. I also want to point out some points of pride in regards to our new MTSS teams this school year. So I asked the 2 teams to give me an overview of just some of the things that they've been working on so far this semester. So at Joliet Central, they've been working on Tier 1 social emotional lessons, targeting tardies, attendance, behavior, and mask wearing and use of electronic communication. They've also, as we shared with the board before, we've had our freshman sophomore refresh week where we talked about behavior and respect, and we know that our freshmen and sophomore students have not been in our building. So our freshmen have not been in our building last year, and our sophomores were partially in, maybe in March and April of last year. So more lessons for our students to get adjusted to school. The English 4 MTSS team, so by Miss Mannering, she has started a credit recovery for students in English 4. knowing that those are senior students that need that English 4 to graduate. So she has done a credit recovery during the school day based on the data that they've been looking at on their MTSS teams. They've identified and provided interventions to students who had those that were a high risk for tardies, behavior, and grades. And I could share out the teams at Joliet Central. For next semester, we're having something called the cool down room. So it came forth because one of the MTSS teams identified that this is a need. So rather, if a student is like agitated or not in a good spot, the teacher would recommend this student go down to the cool down room to decompress. They would work with a staff member there so that to prevent any kind of behavior from escalating. So this is something new that we'll be implementing next school year, or actually next semester at Joliet Central. And just talking with one of the MTSS leads this morning, next semester at Joliet Central, they are embedding a writing support and math tutoring during the school day during advisory. So it's not outside the school day. Students can get that support during their advisory time. So that is an accolade of the team at Joliet Central. Joliet West has many accolades as well. The numbers behind it show you like what grades have taken the lead on this. So at the 12th grade lead, they promoted club and activity signups for our senior students. All areas focused on Tier 1 lessons for attendance, tardies, technology use, community building. We also had that freshman, sophomore refresh at Joliet West as well, focusing on behavior and respect. The teams have started to send out newsletters to staff or families or both. At Joliet West, they have something called restorative advisories. So as they identify students that need more of a restorative advisory. So it's almost similar to like a student that is struggling maybe socially and emotionally, and people have made note of that student. They would be placed in this advisory, and the teacher would work with those students to help them build up their coping mechanisms and their social skills. So that has come forth because of the MTSS teams. We're looking at tardy data, so I could share that that's working. Our teams are very active in monitoring the student tardy data. They're monitoring student attendance, and we're grateful for all the platforms that we've secured because they're really leveraging the 5 Lab and Panorama dashboards. So moving on to math. So I want to point out that this is our second year of the implementation of the new Carnegie curriculum. The first year, this is year 2 for our algebra classes, and the supports that we've provided the teachers. They had summer lesson planning, and actually right now they are getting in-classroom coaching by our Carnegie team. So when the Carnegie team is here on school improvement days to work with the geometry teachers, during the release time, during the morning, they're actually in the classrooms with our algebra teachers, coaching them and co-teaching with them to give them feedback. Resources that we provided the team include each student gets a consumable workbook. We also have a program called Mathia, which allows students to do online practice, and it's responsive. So if a student is accelerating in an area, it will push the student up to a higher level or down, depending on where the student is. And also all math teachers have access to this program called Go Formative, where they can create common assessments, share common assessments with each other, and align those to the standards to check where students are prior to taking the unit test. This is our first year for geometry. So this summer, the geometry team was trained by Carnegie. They've had lesson planning, and actually they're receiving coaching from Carnegie on school improvement days when they have release time. So they're here as a team, as a geometry team, and they're receiving support from Carnegie. Again, they have the same resources as the algebra. I also want to point out that that we're also looking at data and just having conversations with our math teachers and responding to our STAR reading or STAR math data. I wanted to share that we've seen an increase of students who are deficient in some of their basic skill sets in our algebra classes. So I pulled some data, and I've seen it like based from the class of 2022 to our current class, we've seen an increase of 158 students district-wide that have deficit math skills below a fifth grade, what we would consider a fifth grade level. So I'm working with the curriculum director for math, Nicole McMorris, and her team to talk about what those supports should look like, and I'll be bringing that probably to the December school board as a presentation for you. But I wanted to set that foundation of this is what we're seeing. We're not the only district. They're seeing this in all areas. We just got a report from ECRA, a consultant group that we work with, and they provided a report that it's unfinished learning. So they're calling it not a learning loss, but unfinished learning from the pandemic. They noted that students that were not in buildings last school year are even more further behind than students that were in buildings. And thinking about that, our students were not in the building until March, and not all our students came back. And based on the ECRA report, for students, I think it was kindergarten or first grade through eighth grade, there is 4 to 5 months of unfinished learning average in math for those for that first through eighth grade, which they come to us. So like eighth graders come to us. So we're going to see this for a while. So it's really important for us to work with our math teams to be ready and responsive to our students' needs. Other celebrations, this is our first year with math interventionists at each campus. Kudos to Tony Dubchek and Rebecca Stortz. They have been really proactive working with our math teachers and our math students. So they run a Monday through Friday program. Monday through Thursday, they focus on specific groups of students that they work with during advisory. So this is in addition to their math classes. They'll come down to the tutoring centers at each campus and work with the two teachers. And then on Fridays, they have a specialized program called Classroom Pullouts. And it's based on request of the teachers. And actually, Rebecca at the West Campus has started to push into some classes upon request from the teachers. So they've really expanded their program, and we're seeing a lot of success with this. They will be reporting to the school board in January to give you an update on the progress that we've made with our students. Also, this is our second year offering online tutoring. It has been very successful, especially for math. Updated numbers as of today. We've had 18 tutoring sessions in English, 154 in math, 22 in science, 7 in social science, and no changes in the other areas. So a total of 204 online tutoring sessions thus far. And students sign up or parents sign up through an app called Calendly. So they pick, okay, I want math, I want tutoring, Saturday or Sunday. Sunday is a very popular day for our students. Sunday, and they pick a time, and then that connects it with a teacher based on their availability that they shared with the team. So kudos to our online tutoring team. We also have in-person tutoring that just bubbled up this year thanks to Mr. Zorn. Can we play that video? I don't know. Let's see. Click on it. So Mr. Zorn actually started in-person tutoring Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during first hour at Joliet Central. Can you click on it? That's okay. But kudos to Mr. Zorn. He posts a lot on Twitter, but he's implemented online or in-person tutoring at Juliet Central, and then which caused the other areas to start offering in-person tutoring. So he started in August. He's actually, I asked for an update today. He's had 251 students sign up for his morning tutoring. Joliet Central's physics is updated with 7 in person. Joliet West Physics has 3, and Joliet West Chemistry is at 11. So this is grassroots tutoring. Our teachers started this, and it's just expanded for our kids, which is great for everyone. Also, through our Title III grant, we are funding bilingual after-school tutoring at both campuses. We have not had success yet at West. It's a smaller group of students. Mr. Oswald, again, checked today. We haven't had any students sign up, but we're still encouraging them to do so. At West, we've seen more supports with our ELA classes. Great Gateway to Graduation. So this is a program that we offered last school year for our new school board members. This is a program that we target our senior students, so the class of 2022, who are credit deficient for graduation. And what we do is we offer them to take a class outside of the school day through Apex. It's an online program. And then they work with a teacher to recoup that credit. We've actually expanded it this year to target some of our sophomore students who have finished in our GAP program and are sitting in a study hall, and we've given them mostly English 2 to start working on so they can get back on track for graduation. So this is a program that developed because of the pandemic, and we're moving forward with it because we've seen success with our students. Same with Gateway to Graduation. This was a program that we started January of this year, January 2021, based on the pandemic at each campus. This is a program where it's in-house during the school day at each campus. There are two teachers. One focuses in on like English and social science, and then the other one focuses on science and math. And the students only focus on 2 classes at a time, and there's a lot of social emotional supports. And this school year, we also embedded in-person electives and physical education. So a very contained program for our students. The building teams look at their list during the summer, call families, and enroll them into this program. We have just the difference between the 2 campuses. We're short a teacher. So Joliet West, we're short staff. So we have a teacher right now teaching a couple periods in the classroom and then a couple periods in Gateway. So that's why our enrollment numbers aren't as high. There is a need, like we can put more students in at West, we just don't have the staff for it. Parent-teacher conferences we had in mid-October. This is the first time we offered them on over 2 days. So we had several hours on a Thursday evening, and then all day Friday. We had over 3,000 conferences scheduled. I'm not too sure how many parents attended. So in the system that we use, it's called Power PTC. That's how we schedule it with our families. Teachers have the opportunity to take attendance, but we didn't ask them to take attendance through this way. But moving forward, I know this is some of the data that we want to collect. So for the spring semester, we will ask our teachers to utilize the attendance portion of this program so we can capture actually how many parents actually show up. Also, to make everybody aware, our juniors have never been exposed to the format of the SAT since their 8th grade year. So when they were in 8th graders, they took the PSAT 8 when they were in junior high, and then that's it. They didn't take the PSAT 9 when they were freshmen or the PSAT 10 when they were sophomores, and now they're in our buildings and they're taking the SAT in April. So as a district, we agreed that we have to do the best we can to get them ready for that SAT. So in all of our English, in all our junior English classes and all our junior math classes, they will be embedding lessons from about now through April to prepare our students for the SAT. So that's phase one, SAT prep for all students. Phase two is that before Christmas break, we will be sending a letter home promoting the use of Khan Academy so kids can practice that over break if they'd like to. And then phase three is we'll be offering an optional SAT prep outside of the school day after like mid-January through April for a small fee. So we figured hit everyone and then show them the value of Khan Academy because it's free and it adjusts to where the students are and it gives them feedback, but also then offering that optional SAT prep program. And then finally, upcoming, as I shared before, we'll have winter credit recovery. So we offer this, I was a teacher in this, so we've offered this for a very long time. It will be offered at December 27th, 28th, 29th, and January 4th at each campus. The special ed program, we're gonna stick with one campus because of the lack of staffing. So it was very difficult to find the needed staff. There is no cost to families. We do target students between the ranges of 59 to 50% for this. So the criteria is they have to remediate the class within 20 hours. If a student is beyond that, they really should take the class over in summer school or the following year because there's just too much to recover outside of that time. So that's what we have coming up. So good news of what's happening in our classrooms. Questions for me?
No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation, I'd like to invite Mr. Edward Johnson, our Director of Safety and Security, to give us an update on safety and security.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So the safety and security presentation that I'm going to give you this evening is kind of an overview of my assessment and the things that I've looked at since coming on in the position of Safety and Security Director as of April of this year.
Mr. Johnson, I don't think the microphone is on. Wait for it to turn green.
No, no.
Now I think it is.
Got it?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So the position of Safety and Security Director was approved by this board and made operational as of April of this year. This is a newly created position within the district, and the goal and directive of the position is to coordinate and organize all aspects of security throughout the district by standardizing, streamlining, and implementing safety and security protocols based on best practices, industry standards across the board. So just a quick backstory to this. Prior to me coming involved with applying to this position, I did look into the school district. I've worked in Joliet for many years. I knew the area, I knew the school, but I also wanted to see what 204 was doing in regards to safety and security prior to coming on board. And what I found was something that is impressive to me for somebody that works in this industry. Things that you had already been doing prior to creating this position. The Blue Point alert system was already on board in this district prior to my arrival, and that's something I'm going to talk about this evening. You already had an in-house security staff operational within the facility itself, and you had done an assessment on the district from a safety and security standpoint by Mr. Paul Tim. And for those that don't know who Paul Tim is, he's actually one of the leading experts in the world of school safety and security anywhere in the nation. The man writes books on the topic. So that in and of itself was something that really drew me to District 204, not only because it's in my own backyard, but because of what you were doing progressively already. So with that, what I want to do is talk about 3 different areas that I looked at coming into the district this year. The first thing we'll start out with is staffing. So the district employs its own in-house security, as I said, and the way that's made up is we have full-time security paraprofessionals, which are part of a union. We also have what we refer to as fill-in, and those fill-in individuals are made up of instructional parapros that are part of that same union, as well as cafeteria monitors that are part-time individuals that work in the district in the cafeteria for a portion of the day. The reason we say fill-in is because what they have a tendency to do is when we have areas that need security attention, we will bring in the cafeteria monitors, the paraprofessionals, on their non-working hours. Meaning if you're a cafeteria worker that comes in at 10 o'clock, we might bring you in earlier to assist with check-in for students, those types of things. And then our substitute security, they basically are a call-out list of individuals that we can call upon if we have people that call in sick for the day, those types of things. They also work additional hours. So those are the people you're going to see working security at all of our events, football games and dances, so on and so forth. They fill in doing hours there as well. So as we start talking about staffing, currently Joliet Township High School employs 35 full-time security personnel, and that's spread throughout the district. The way that breaks down is we have 1 supervisor and 14 security officers that are at Joliet Central High School. We have 3 security officers that are assigned to our Pathways building. We have the transition center now has 1 security officer, and that is a new facility, and that position is newly created and operational as of October of this year. Joliet West High School also has 1 supervisor with 13 security officers, and then here at the administration building, we also have 1 security officer that works here, and again, that is a newly created position by this board, operational as of October of this year. In regards to the supervision of that staff, the supervisor at Joliet Central also oversees the people that work at Pathways and at the Transition Center, and the supervisor at Joliet West oversees the personnel that work out of this building. Staffing operations. So let me explain a little bit as to how the security works, and it's a little bit different in no matter which building you go to. So when you look at the administration building and you look at the transition center, they work on more of a security desk, front desk operations system, meaning that their main responsibility is to check people in and out of the building on a regular basis. They also walk the building on a rotation every once in a while. They're responsible for operating cameras or watching cameras as well as checking the exterior of the property. When you look at Pathways, that is also a stationary position for the security officers, and the reason is just because of the size of the building. It is a smaller facility, and it can actually be manned by those 3 people in the straightaways of the hallway, other than moving into the cafeteria every once in a while to check on individuals that might be in there. At Joliet Central, they work off of a rotational setting, meaning that every passing period that takes place, after that happens, they move their security to different positions within the building. So the person that may start out handling front desk operations may then move to exterior roving patrol, or they might be filling in doing monitoring the cafeteria, those types of things. And then when you look at Joliet West, they operate on more of a permanent sector situation, to where those individuals are in specific areas that they work, and they're responsible for those areas. So there's some good and bad to both of those things. When you're stationary in a position for a period of time, the good part of that is that you're seeing the same students at the same time of day going through. So you're getting to know faces and individuals. You may not be establishing rapport with those individuals at that point in time just because it happens very quickly, but you're in a situation where you're at least knowing who those individuals are by sight. Other problem that happens with that, though, is sometimes that can become stagnant in regards to maybe not seeing everything that's there because you're so used to being there all the time. In regards to Joliet Central, with their rotation, that's good in the fact that it keeps people occupied in regards to moving from place to place and doing different things within the areas that they're working in. But at the same time, you don't get that same necessarily recognition of students at the same place each time of day. Going forward, one of the things we're looking at is the possibility of kind of a hybrid between what Joliet West and Joliet Central are doing, where we're creating positions that are maybe manned for a period of time, a day, a week, something like that, and then it's rotated to a different position for the following week or the following day. So when we look at recommendations on staffing, right now, as I said, we have fill-ins. We're utilizing cafeteria monitors before and after their cafeteria shifts to fill in areas where we need to plug in security based on the expansions of the building and the expansions of the population in the buildings over time. So recommendation that we would be looking at is converting the 5 cafeteria monitors at each campus into full-time security staff. They're already basically working in there on a full-time basis. We would look to put them in full-time, while still maintaining 2 part-time cafeteria monitors that are going to assist with cafeteria operations. They've been needed, especially during the COVID period, because they're assisting in wiping down tables, removing trays that didn't get picked up by students, those types of things, with a very, very fast turnaround in those cafeterias on a daily basis. That results in the fact that we'll have 5 additional full-time security at each location that can not only help us monitor the cafeterias, but be plugged into other locations within the school and handle and assist with security operations. Things like we've come across this year in regards to having to escort people to and from the health office or different locations within the building. The other recommendation we would make would be moving the security supervisors from a 10-month position to an actual 12-month position. And this would allow us to better utilize those positions in a year-round capacity. Right now, both campuses are starting to see very robust summer programs. There's a lot of students on campuses during the summer. So we automatically have to have people in working security. So to have a security supervisor on site would be beneficial, where previously that duty has fallen to the assistant principals to handle the payroll and those types of things that typically supervisors do throughout the year. The other thing it does is it allows us to work on projects and plans throughout the summer, meaning myself and the supervisors, for the upcoming year, things that we want to look at, things that we want to do moving forward that we don't necessarily have time to work on when school is in session. And then we can also designate specific large events that they would be available for, meaning right now, the supervisors are not part of that union, and they don't typically work a lot of overtime. What we could do is specify specific times that we would want them. So we want them there for graduations. We want them there for specific football games, large events, those types of things. The next thing we're going to talk about is training. Over the years, staff have received some training on several different topics. Things like the GCN training, which is their individual computer-based training that everyone in the district that's an employee has to complete. And it's broken down into sections that have to be completed by October and again by April. CPR and AED certifications, which they have done previously, but again, those are things that need to be addressed on a regular basis. They've had training on bullying, gangs, drug activity, and that will be continued, as well as they've conducted tabletop exercises and scenarios such as bomb threats, different activities like that. And then we always have our lockdown drills that we go through on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, Joliet West, we just did one today. So one of the first things we needed to address coming in is looking at the standards and the professional training that's needed for the security staff, and to start moving them in the direction of annual training, regular trainings to get them certified with some of these things. When I started in the district, working here, I met with security and I started asking questions about what kind of things they thought that maybe would be beneficial to them in their day-to-day operations, the kinds of things that they would like to see implemented for their training. There's a laundry list of that, and I'm not going to go through all these with you. I apologize. I'm moving two things at one time. So there's a laundry list of these things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you will see things like crowd control, how to herd, cut, and contain individuals, things like de-escalation and verbal judo, simple report writing information, making sure we have the right information if something were to occur and document that information. Professional development. Because security works randomly, again, they handle games at the end of the day. They handle check-in in the morning. They're not always available for a full staff to sit down and go through a training. One of the recommendations, right now, we are using SIP days. In other words, Thursday we have a SIP day, and we have Sarah Bess is coming in to finish up some training with us that we received on the CPI training. We're also looking for a recommendation to utilize Institute days as a training day for security staff members. Right now, security and students show up on the same day for the start of school. We'd like to bring them in a day or two ahead of time to get them updated with any new changes that have been made throughout the district, things that we need to do differently, and get them up and running before the doors open up and the students come into the school. We could also offer some non-mandatory training, because again, these are 10-month employees, some non-mandatory training that they could do throughout the summer if they chose to do so. Completed training so far this year, the team has gone through and done their GCN training for October that needed to be done. The CPI training, let me spend a little bit of time talking about that. So this board allowed the entire security staff to attend CPI training. We did that October 15th. It is the nonverbal crisis intervention, and for those that don't understand maybe what that's all about, this is giving security staff other tools to work with, to put in their toolbox, things like de-escalation, things like being able to establish rapport with students, how to engage students that may be having ongoing issues that we're not necessarily aware of, and how to get them to different areas, not necessarily just deans for discipline, but how to get them to social workers, how to get them to maybe even a specific teacher that they can work with to address the issues that maybe they're dealing with at that point in time. The entire security staff went through that training. All of them, we had conversation. I attended training as well. We had conversation at lunch. And I had said to them beforehand that we'd be looking for people to train trainers in this. People were text messaging me while we were in the training saying, hey, I'm interested, I'd like to train, so on and so forth. So again, thank you to the board for allowing us to go ahead and get that training underway. Radio procedure. So there's a lot of radios, and you'll see me talk about that in just a minute, that are operating throughout the district. It's very important not only know how to operate it, but how to speak, how to listen, and how to understand the information and disseminate information that's going through. The Blue Point Alert System, the security staff, their last SIP day training, they did training on the Blue Point Alert System that I'll talk about in a minute. They were not only trained on the system and what it does, but they were actually put through a demonstration of that program as well. Metal detecting in bag searches and the proper way to operate and go through metal detecting in bag searches and the procedure for that. Annual drill requirements. So again, we obviously always have to go through the annual drills, which we've done, that I've put up there. Majority of these we've already touched upon. A lot of them get covered in safety week with the school, things like earthquake and tornado drills. The bus evacuations are normally covered by the PE department, and because of the size of both the schools, those typically take a day or two to get through with the size of the classes. The fire drills, Joliet Fire Department needs to be on site to observe at least one of those when we do them. And then our lockdown drills, because we are part of the Blue Point Alert System, we are required to do at least one Blue Point activation alert, which is what we did today at Joliet West. The other one can be just on our own without Blue Point. After the Blue Point alert and the lockdown drill, we always do a debriefing with the police department, and there's feedback that goes both ways in regards to things that happened, things that didn't happen. Just for your benefits, so you know, the words the supervisor from Joliet Police Department used today in regards to Joliet West is, it went flawlessly. So we're doing it right with the school in regards to the lockdown. And then there's also new guidelines that we need to follow that we are already on board with in regards to notifications per state statute for lockdown drills. Students have been receiving training as well, and that'll continue. Again, with Safety Week, they cover a lot of different things with the students and talk about a lot of different topics with them. The Great Shakeout, again, the Blue Point Alert System, those types of things. So when we start talking about the equipment, that's one of the last things we want to talk about as we go through here. We operate and maintain various types of equipment throughout the district. Things like vehicles, metal detection systems, radios, the Blue Point system, Raptor Technologies, our Salient, that's our video camera system, and now the AED program. So with vehicles, currently the security department operates 2 vehicles, one at Joliet West, one at Joliet Central. Those are pickup trucks that security does roving patrols on the exterior of the buildings. The one at Joliet Central became non-operational about 4 months ago. Mr. Shaw at Transportation is allowing us a loaner vehicle from the Transportation Center, and he is currently looking at getting bids for 2 new vehicles, one for each campus. Once we have those, the goal is to outfit those with first aid kits, AEDs, fire extinguishers, cones and barricades, those types of things. And the reason for that is that those vehicles are probably going to be the first vehicles to arrive on any activity that happens outside of the school building. So to have them equipped, obviously, is something that we need to have happen. The reason we utilize pickup trucks is because things like the metal detectors have to be moved out to the fields when we do football games, those types of things. So that's the reason that we actually use trucks. Garrett Metal Detection is the system that we use for handling metal detecting in all the schools. Currently, we have 19 walkthroughs, which is the item you see on the right-hand lower corner there. And then we have 17 of the handheld detection wands, like they use when you came in the building this evening. You can see the breakdown in each of the schools and the way we have them. The difference between Joliet Central and Joliet West with 10 and 10 versus 7 and 5 is merely because of the way they do metal detecting. Where at Joliet Central, it is more spread out in regards to the doors and entrances they use. Joliet West has some 3 key locations that they pretty much have people doing their metal detecting at those locations. So it's just a matter of proximity. Radio communications. So as I said before, we have a lot of radios, not just security, but transportation, building and grounds, and the deans, administrators all have them. We've accumulated a variety of different radios over the years. Some of those are becoming non-operational, and it's not even feasible for us to try to repair those at this point. So we are looking at upgrading some of the radios that do need repair. Places like the new transition center needs approximately 8 to 10 radios because of what they do and where they go with students. Right now, I believe they have 2 to 3 in the building. Part of the issue that we are running into with that is just the ability to get product. So it's not a matter of not being able to bring in radios or want to bring in radios. It's a matter of they're not, like everything else, it's sitting in cargo ships out in the ocean. So the lead time on radios right now, at minimum, is 10 weeks. However, we have talked to Motorola distributor Bearcon, who is willing to possibly rent us radios temporarily, at least for the transition center, until we can get some of those products coming in. The other thing with the radio systems is we operate off of an analog system. One of the things that happens is we lose signal in these steel and stone buildings that we operate in. Signal drops. By federal guideline, we can only boost that signal so far. So unless we went to all digital radios, which is extremely expensive, we really can't move anything in regards to boosting the signal. What we can do, though, at a more inexpensive rate, is add repeaters that help carry that signal between the different buildings. So again, that would be something that we'd be looking at going forward. The Blue Point Alert System, I've talked about it a couple of different times this evening, and I'll go through it as quickly as I can for you. First of all, the fact that you have this is definitely a benefit to this district. There's not a lot of districts that are have this set up in their schools at this point. It is becoming bigger and bigger as it's moving forward. But basically, for those that don't understand the system, it works a lot like a fire department pull-down call box. Basically, the blue box you see on the left-hand side is positioned throughout the buildings in the district. And if somebody sees an active aggressor or some kind of a threat, they pull that box. It immediately sends a response to, it's a third-party monitoring system at Blue Point that notifies the police department, but the signal automatically goes to our cell phones. And when I say our cell phones, there are people in the district who have the Blue Point platform on their phones, and it alerts that phone automatically. And it gives 3 pieces of information. It tells us where the alarm is coming from, meaning what building and where location-wise in the building. The second thing it does is it gives us a link that you can pull up that gives you the camera that focuses in the area that that pull box is at. Now understand that just because the pull box is being monitored in this location by a camera does not necessarily mean that's where the activity is going on at. It could be that something's happening on this side of the room, the pull box was activated. But it gives us a starting point to look at when first responders are coming on scene. One of the things that we have done as I've come on now, myself along with Dr. Hampton have looked at the people that are on that list. We have updated all the Joliet police officers that need to be on it. And when I say need to be on it, the entire police department doesn't have to have this app. What we're trying to do is get it to the people that are going to be on site, the people, the officers that work that area, the SWAT team that responds to that area, those types of individuals, give them access to it. And the last thing the Blue Point does is through the phone system, it allows live text messaging between individuals within the building. So if I'm a teacher and I have a student that's injured in my classroom, I can send that text out. And not only are the other people in the building that have that platform seeing it, but law enforcement is also seeing that. The people that are networking the response are seeing it. So the Blue Point, again, very beneficial system to the school district. If you see the one on the right-hand side, the medical one, we also have that. That gives a medical response if somebody would fall or get injured in the hallway, those types of things. And then the second picture in, you see a strobe light. Those are on the exterior of the building. So when we alert the Blue Point alert system, those strobes go off outside, and that's warning people, hey, something's going on inside the building, stay away, move away. Our transportation people have been told, if you see that, take the bus, go elsewhere, get off site, those types of things. The last phase of this that we're looking at doing is pushing this out to our athletic fields. So we are looking to put strobes and audio out there. When this pull box gets activated within the school, there is a repetitive statement that goes on that we are in lockdown, please get to an area and secure, and it continues. The other thing we have access to is pendants, which you'll see on the lanyards, that can be taken out remotely as well and be activated if they're out on a activity field or remote from the school. The Raptor Technologies, very quickly, is our access control system. What we're able to do with the Raptor technology system is if individuals are coming into the school, we can take their state driver's license and ID, we can run it through our system. It will notify us if anybody is on sex offender registry. It will also notify us of anybody that we have put into the system. So if there is a parent or a grandparent or somebody that is not supposed to have contact with a student, not supposed to be in the school, we can add them into our system, and it will red flag that individual if they try to enter the school. The video surveillance systems, currently, we have 686 cameras throughout the district. That increased since 2018, when it was 503, so it's increased by 183. And we are discussing further locations for more deployments of video surveillance systems. The automated external defibrillators, this was previously taken care of by Building and Grounds. Now that there is a safety and security department per se, this is going to come under that umbrella. And we have a vendor with Second Chance Cardiac Solutions. Security will be checking these on a monthly basis to make sure everything is intact. Cardiac Solutions will come through annually to make sure everything is updated. Anything that needs to be switched out will be, so they provide that service. The other advantage to having them as a vendor is they provide trainings in things like CPR, the AED deployment, things that we're also talking about in regards to stop the bleed, which is tourniquet applications, EpiPen dispensement, those types of things. So they're a very good resource for us. School resource officers, we have 3 school resource officers or SROs within the district, one at Central. I apologize, you guys. The problem is I'm having a hard time seeing up there at this point. So the school resource officers, we have 3 within the district, one at West, one at Central, and one at Pathways. Those are Joliet Police Department detectives that are assigned to the school district permanently, and they come at no additional cost to the school district. They are provided by the department. They work in the schools on a daily basis. They have offices in the school, and they work with our students and with our staff regularly. In regards to the Joliet Police Department, we've had a long-standing relationship with them, and obviously we look forward to continuing that. Event officers, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I will close out. The event officers, currently, what we do is when we have large events, football games, graduations, things like that, we hire in off-duty Joliet police officers who work through the Joliet Police Department to provide enhanced security for us at large events when we have a lot of people. Right now, because the Joliet Police Department is also experiencing staffing, they're trying to bring their staff back up to where it was previously. They've had a lot go out on injury, a lot go out by retirement, and they're bringing that staffing back up. But the problem that we've run into is where previously we've had officers signing up for those jobs, where maybe we need 8 officers or 5 officers for an event, we're maybe getting 1 or 2. And the reason is because the street obviously comes first and answering calls for service on the street, so those officers are working overtime in those capacities. What we are looking to do is creating a call-out list of officers from local jurisdictions who would be able to come in and work in that capacity. Joliet Police Department would obviously always have first opportunity to, because it's individuals that work in our environment here. But what we would look at is maybe state, county, Shorewood, Crest Hill officers from those areas to possibly backfill those vacancies if they were to come open. Other than that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and I know it was a lot of information that I tried to push through very, very quickly, so if you have any questions, by all means.
I have a question.
Okay.
In light of our challenges that we've been going through at Joliet West, can you just share with us, like, what model was being used prior? If the same model is being used, what adjustments have you made in the building?
Sure. So in regards to the model itself, nothing has been changed on the model that you use. And the reason for that is, while I've been here since April, I've actually only seen the buildings in operation for basically 3 months. And in order to make changes, I think we have to see what's going on and how things are progressing with what they do to be able to make a accurate decision on what kind of changes need to happen. One of the things that we talked about here tonight was the training. Training is going to definitely be at the forefront of everything that we do going forward, because I think it's something that, as a security team, there are things that, like the CPI training that we went through, those are things that they didn't have previously that are giving them other tools to work with, other things that they can do, again, other than just referring them for discipline and those types of things. So do I see things changing and moving in that regards? Absolutely. Is that something that we want to change overnight? Not until we have an accurate depiction of the direction we want to go with it.
Can I go off of that and kind of, and forgive me if I missed it or something, but you had said something about maybe changing Joliet Central, like what they're doing in some parts, like having them stick to certain spaces and places like Joliet West does currently, but moving them around, even like shifting them. So my question, I guess, is if it's not broken, why change it? Because it seems to be working for Joliet Central. And I hear you, they get used to spaces and spaces, but I feel like Joliet Central's model is already working.
Right, so, and I understand that. I think what hasn't been looked at is the expansion of the facilities and the expansion of the population over the time set that they've had these same positions and these same locations. So one of the next steps that we have to look at is, are the people that we have positioned in the right places, or do we need them in different locations? There are some high-traffic areas that we may need to move people to. And again, things do happen when we start moving people around the building. What I mean by that is that maybe we have somebody that's operating on the third floor, but then that third floor person now gets called to escort somebody. So then somebody else is now covering both the second and third floor. And people start to move throughout the day into different areas just based on the calls that are coming out that they're responding to. And what's happening is that maybe you get called from the third floor to escort a student, and then another call comes out in your area, so then I move from where I'm at to cover that call and deal with that. So you have people moving throughout the building. And again, what I'm talking about going forward is more of a hybrid. I'm not talking about tearing apart what they're doing. Because for one, I'm not trying to upset the apple cart when it comes to the security personnel themselves. They do a good job. They are responsive to the things that we've been presenting so far in regards to training. What we're looking is what's the best use of the staffing? What's the best use of the manpower that we have, more than something that's broken or not broken? Did that answer the question? Sir?
Yeah, I guess I'm piggybacking off of both of those. So we've seen Central get quite a bit better. West is still West. I made a few visits myself there. I'm sure other board members have. We talked about strategic placing of security guards in A building. We've talked about hall suites. We talked about teachers at the doors. And I honestly, I'm not seeing that. And then I'm continuing to hear that the fights are still what they are at West. And I can almost understand why when I roam through there's just not this presence of security. Even when we see things that happen, there's a long time response. Where if we know where these fights are typically happening, I feel like if the few people we have are strategically placed, those things would help. Hall suites every period of, there's cafeteria issues at the end of the day. There's just a lot going on, and the health and safety and security of the kids are the priority. And I just don't, as a board member, when I'm there, I just don't, and I'm specifically talking about West. Central's fine when I've been there, and the numbers speak for it. And I think there's things in the long term that you can do as far as moving people around, but I also think there's short-term things you can do. I don't know if you can speak to that, but I'm just not seeing some of the things that, I'm told is happening.
Okay.
Can I jump in a little bit?
Absolutely.
So, part of the presentation, and I want to make sure I'm answering the question, to have people rotate around, because I did ask this question, and have more movement and have more supervision. For example, checking in on bathrooms, having more people in the cafeteria, we have determined that it would be helpful to have additional staffing. You know, you have the static positions that at the front main entrances that have to be more static in nature, and you have to have people check the cameras. So we do believe that the additional staff will help with the supervision of the hallways and bathrooms. In addition to the things that you've said that you haven't seen, like we're gonna keep talking to staff to be out and visible in the halls, you know, between passing periods. So that is something we'll certainly reiterate. But we think the additional staff will help us with more of that hybrid model. And so again, I think the question you were asking, Central rotates right now. They rotate on an hourly basis. So there's some thought in not stopping the rotation, but maybe not having it rotate as much if we have more staff. So again, not blowing it up, but enhancing it, and then also having the ability to have more supervision around those areas where we're seeing more incidents, which would be bathrooms, hallways, and cafeteria.
So I feel like one of the things you're asking though also is how quickly will this be put into place? Like,
Yeah, but I mean, because the things I'm talking about are things we've been told are happening, like as we speak.
If they are not.
Yeah, and they are not, and then the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, when you go there and you walk through, right, there's just not a presence, and it's disheartening, especially when this is what we're in the media now for, right? And it's like, you know, I don't know.
To piggyback off of that some more, if I hear what you're saying is like, we get presented that this stuff is happening, and then we hear back from staff in the actual building that, wait, that's not happening. And so, is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, like
and like when he's in the building, so you're saying you don't see it. I've heard that staff doesn't see it happening. So I guess like, when's it gonna start happening? Like even just things of like, are the tardy sweeps ongoing? How often are they happening? Like we were told like music's gonna be playing, and announcements are gonna be made, and I heard that announcements aren't being made, and so these things are we hear but we don't see. And so I guess like when are we gonna see it? And I don't know if that's personally for security, but like just in general.
We can share the data in the periods where there's hall sweeps. We can share that data. Also in December, we're going to bring back the data for tardies, and West has decreased the overall tardies on campus throughout the day. We've seen that happen, and so we have the hall sweeps that have occurred. So we can bring that data back to the board because they aren't doing hall sweeps every period, and it's in specific locations because it is due to the staff that is available. So they've made a schedule of where they do it. So I can bring that back to the board to share that with the board of education.
To go further with that, are there tardies down because there's less tardies, or are there tardies down because teachers aren't following the policy? Because the feedback I'm hearing is that teachers aren't writing the referrals because they have to do 8 things. So from what I've heard from staff that I have talked to, so in addition to that data, I'd like more data based on the staff input and how they're feeling about what is being implemented, because you can skew data any way you want. We need the feedback on is it actually this policy being implemented, and do teachers feel that it's effective? Because that's like what you say is great, the tardies are down, but why? Are they down because kids aren't in the hallway, or are they down because they're not writing the referrals?
So the one thing I could say is the data we're looking at is the number of kids marked tardy, not referrals. So it's the number of kids marked tardy, and then we can also provide the board with the number of students with the excessive tardy, because that's where a referral is written. So it's looking at both.
Okay.
And we'll put that together like we intended for December board meeting.
Still like that staff feedback on it. But I had a question, if we're done with this, about that. Are yours answered?
Well, I was just gonna say, with the random hall sweeps, like, I think we've all been to both schools several times. My question, I guess, is, along with the random, are they doing it consistently? Like, because at Joliet Central, I know the morning, or you gotta get 2 minutes. It's consistent. It's every day. It's all day. You got 2 minutes. You got the staff being like, all right, we gotta go, we gotta go, we gotta go. I've seen it a million times. I'm wondering, is it going on as consistently at Joliet West? And I know we're doing training. I know we're working on relationship building, but are we doing that currently?
So the time I went, it was 4th period e-building, which it was just that time of day. And that was a bit confusing because, like, you could stand at one end of e-building and look all the way to the other. A lot of fights aren't happening in the e-building. So it's just, from where I sit, something's off.
That was almost sort of a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I know, but I
couldn't
couldn't let it just sit out there.
So it'd just be helpful to have more consistency.
You were first.
So I'm looking at all these different training topics that you have for your security staff, and how you deal with security with adults is very different than how you deal with security with teenagers. And I'm not seeing how you're training staff on how to deal with teenagers, how to build relationships, and how to staff, basically how to have security specifically for teenagers.
So the CPI training that we went to was some of that was being addressed. I mean, we went over an entire day of instruction on that with the entire security staff. And then again, on this upcoming SIP day, Sarah Bess will be coming out and actually continuing that training going forward with the SIP day. So the CPI training was an entire day of working with students and looking at the different aspects of things that can come up with them.
I'm asking too because I asked this specifically because with my CPI training, it didn't really focus on, it's more like de-escalation, but it didn't really focus on like the relationship part and getting to know teenagers. It's more of like de-escalating once something's already going on.
We also paid for, well, part of the training was also about trauma infused.
Okay.
So that was an add-on that they had with that. So that was.
With the CPI?
Yep.
Okay.
We had
All
that
right.
added.
Thank you.
And then the relationship piece, our consultant, Sarah Bess, that's also something that she works with us on, restoring community with building relationships with staff and students.
Okay.
But isn't there a difference in training security and staff and teachers? You don't give the same type of training to a teacher that you give to security.
We haven't done CPI with all of these teachers. We've done it with some teachers.
Right, but you're training security on that.
Yes.
So that's what you're training them on. So when you say your training, your specific training, Chris, it's not the same sometimes.
No,
It's the same
CPI,
CPI? Okay, CPI.
But we did the add-on piece
Right.
with
Yeah, I
the
didn't have
trauma.
the
Add-on piece, right. So that's what I'm saying. Now, the question I have, anybody else have any questions? Dennis?
Yep.
You answer? Okay. Go ahead.
Most physical altercations happen in unstructured settings.
Absolutely.
In the school system, right? And so I do know that there's been a number of altercations in the cafeteria where I have seen video footage where it takes over a half of a minute before an adult even intervene. And I'm wondering, have we looked at how we are manning the cafeteria versus the hallways?
Yes. So again, going back to the recommendations that we're making to the board is instead of keeping the 5 cafeteria monitors that we have, bringing in full-time security staff that will staff the cafeteria as well as have other responsibilities prior to and after the lunch periods. So that would put more people inside those areas during that time.
But until then, it's.
So we have substitutes that we can bring in, but understand that the substitutes that we have do not necessarily have all the same trainings that our full-time security staff is obtaining. So in order to bring in individuals who can do security work, but don't necessarily have all the same tools that we're trying to give our full-time security staff, yes, we can have bodies in there.
And I guess I asked that question because in my experience in the cafeteria, if you are rotating around the cafeteria, you can identify when something is getting ready to happen as opposed to standing in one spot. And so that's why I asked that question, because most altercations are happening in the cafeteria. And so a staff member can get to the situation a lot quicker or break it up before it even gets to that point. So, and that's why I asked that question. I was just curious.
No, absolutely, and you're correct. Having staff in the cafeteria is definitely something that we need to make sure continues. Having people that are properly trained in there. Obviously, you've seen the lunch periods. It is extremely crowded in those lunchrooms. So trying to keep an eye on everything that's going, the more eyes that we have in there, the better off. And that is the reason for that staffing recommendation.
Thank you.
And we're voting on that tonight, right?
Yes, it's an action item.
It's action item.
I have a question. We talk a lot about hiring more people. We talk about giving them training. And while that might be good and great and everything, how often are we evaluating our security? And how are we evaluating to ensure that they're doing a good job? Playing off of what Garrett said, I think there's a clear difference in the performance of security personnel between the two districts. It appears Central, those security guards are doing an exemplary job, where I see many at West that don't appear to be. So how often are we reviewing them, and what's the criteria to review them?
So in regards to reviewing the individuals, again, I'm going to go back to the staffing. One of the issues that working with this staffing issue and getting this resolved would be that the supervisors that are at each campus currently are working supervisors, which means they are standing a post throughout the district in different areas. Mr. Campbell, who is the supervisor, and he's a new supervisor at Joliet West, is pretty much in the cafeteria on a regular basis because of exactly what you said. It does not give them the opportunity to move through the building and necessarily oversee what is going on with their staff on a daily basis. Do they engage with them? Do they find out what's going on and evaluate? Yes, they have the opportunity to do that, but it is limited in regards to the amount of time that they have, because typically they are engaged in other activities, be it searching bags and metal detecting, or again, standing a specific post in a specific area.
Can I add to that too, though?
Sure.
With our security staff, it's not just the security supervisors. We have administrators who also oversee security staff. That's every day, all day. And if there's something that is not being performed correctly, supervisors, administrators know to address those things and address those things immediately. So this evaluation is not something we have a formal evaluation every year, but truly you're being evaluated every day. And we try to make adjustments every day. And if someone is not performing those duties and responsibilities, then we have to address those things, in a more expedited manner. And maybe sometimes, those individuals just may not be a fit, for that position. So those are things that's happening on a day-to-day basis. The adjustments we made, like in cafeteria now, more administrators, deans are in there now. We deploy security staff differently now in terms of those cafeteria, and we have identified some lunch periods where there's more problems than others. So we're making those adjustments as we move through and as we get data and we know those things are happening. But evaluation happens daily in terms of what we do. And I think as we add more staff, because part of the issue is hiring, okay? So those cafeteria monitors that we have, and there's 5 at each campus, it's been very difficult to even find individuals, and this is not unique to us. We hear this nationally on the news every day in terms of just finding people. So those are bodies that we would normally have every day before school, during cafeteria, and after school, after cafeteria, that we don't have anymore. And so now we have to move security that may be positioned somewhere else to another location. So now we believe, in terms of shifting these positions from part-time to full-time, we now will be able to find, staff who are looking for full-time jobs with benefits, and have those necessary bodies that we would always have had in the past to assist with all of the things that's happening in our building on a day-to-day basis. We have 3,300 students with almost 400 to 500 staff, right? So everyone's responsible for the safety and security of our building, right? Even though we're talking about security, everyone's responsible for the safety and security of our buildings. And that's administrators, that's teachers, that's custodians, that's cafeteria workers. We're all responsible in that. And so, but that evaluation is daily throughout the year.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that too, because if we're not doing that, then we're failing security, and if we're failing security, we're failing all of our students.
Right.
And these security guards need feedback to improve, not just the training, right? They need the training.
Right.
Then they need that feedback. So as long as they're getting that feedback to improve, which they do a better job, security's better, students are safer, all these different things. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
In regards to what Dr. Hampton's saying, with the assistant principals, I'm in contact regularly with Joe Wooten, with Steve Locke. Steve Locke and my conversations start normally around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, to go back and forth in regards to things that are going to be going on for the day. Joe communicates to me, as well as they are also communicating to the supervisors in those buildings as to what their requirements and their needs are for the day. So we do have that communication going between all of us.
To kind of go to both of you had said is if administrator, Joe Wooten and Steve Locke are doing those things, and part of the things that we had issues with earlier is that we didn't see a presence of admin in the hallway. So if admin's not in the hallway, how are they monitoring the security? And am I wrong? Or are they more visible now? Because I've heard some things like, I don't see the assistant principals in the hallway. So are we having more as administrators visible in the hallways to see what is going on with the security? Because if they're in charge of making sure things are happening, they need to have a presence to see what's happening.
I can speak to my time in the buildings. Yes, I see administrators in the building. I can tell you from looking at cameras that there are more teachers standing in the hallways now than previously had happened. We just started setting up where we are now having both deans and security work metal detecting, just because it's more time saving that if a student has something on them they're not supposed to, rather than taking time away for security to take that person to a dean, having a dean on site with us. So yes, administrators are out in the buildings and interacting not only with students but with security and other staff as well.
I can attest to that. In the recent visits that I've had, I've seen more, because the first few visits, I didn't see administration. And the last 4 weeks, I've seen it consistently more, and I've had the opportunity to meet some of them that I hadn't met before.
Glad to hear that.
Real quick, I have a short ask. Is there some type of daily post that we could get? So when we go into the schools, we have an expectation that there's going to be people posted wherever on these specific days. Is there something like that? Do the security guards come in and they know where they're, and is that laid out somewhere where we could see okay, yeah, this is where I should find security?
So the answer to that is yes and yes. Obviously the security at West, as we said before, are pretty much in the same spots every day. They move, some positions move for a portion of the day, and then Central rotates on a regular basis. But yes, we have the opportunity to get that information to individuals that need it, without a doubt.
Sorry, I have one more question. Oh, probably not, maybe a couple more. So you say with West, they have a spot, is it like a spot, or are they having like an area that they're roaming around?
So that's the sector that I talked about. So let's use the E hallway, for example, at Joliet West, right? There is a spot there that they're assigned to, but their area of coverage is up and down that hallway, that building, so on and so forth.
So if I were to come in, I would see them standing in the spot or walking around?
It depends on what they're doing. Sometimes they're stationary, sometimes they're moving.
So when do you determine how often they're moving and going through the hallways? Is it once every 10 minutes? Is it once every 5 minutes?
No, and I don't think you can set them on a schedule like that because it's really dependent on what they have going on. That person might be standing in the E hallway for a period of time, and then they get a call to go down to this room and get this student because they're leaving the property, or they need to be escorted to the health office, or whatever the case might be. So there's no set pattern. It's not like working what they refer to in the security world as a DTEX round, where every half hour you're going around and hitting the same spots. It's need-based. So I'll give you an example. Passing periods. Security is pretty much stationary during passing periods. One, because moving through hallways, as you've seen, is not an easy thing to do. But two, to be stationary is the easiest way to see everything that's going on. Now, when they position themselves in that E hallway that I'm talking about, they have two lines of sight, all the way down past the main office, and then they have the main hallway in that building as well. So, yes, they have a stationary position, but they are able to move throughout that area.
So I guess my question is, like, I know personally, if I open my classroom door, at least once or twice a class period, I'm gonna see someone walk by. So if I need something, I can be like, hey, so I guess that's my question, is could teachers expect to see at least security walk by their class period at least once a period or twice a period? I mean, I guess I'm looking like you're saying, you're not really answering it, but answering it, but like, so could teachers expect to see the security walking by their classroom on a regular basis? Maybe not once a period, but at least a few times a day or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because they're in those areas, they should be, if nothing else, they have to go through to do bathroom checks, those types of things anyway. So they should be moving through the hallways and not just in that one stationary location for the entire day.
But the classes do have call boxes, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
They have call boxes, don't they?
The classrooms, okay, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So-
I was thinking the Blue Point call boxes.
I'm just
sorry.
saying, so just because you don't see a security don't mean you can't get one.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
But I think you're referring to just
I
having.
understand.
Yeah, the presence.
The presence is
I
a
understand.
Sure, no,
But-
that's part of the security duty is the omnipresence, right? To have that visibility of them being there, which takes away the thought process of, hey, I'm not going to do something I'm not supposed to because there's people moving through this area that are going to see, right? It's that omnipresence thought. So in answer to your question, yes, throughout the day, they should be moving through their areas.
Any other questions?
We do have campus and logistics. We do have designated people as rovers around our campuses outside as well.
Correct. So at Joliet West, there's one individual assigned to that roving patrol, and he does a lot of work in regards to letting the deans and the security know if we have late buses coming in. Today, when the Blue Point activation went off, he was there to make sure that any students that might be coming up to the building late or any buses that might be arriving, to move them away from that location. So they have specific duty. At the Joliet Central campus, that position rotates throughout the security personnel. They move from position to position.
Thank you very much. If there's no other questions, and we can get the information that was requested to the board. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is our 2020-2021 annual financial presentation from Wormer, Rogers, Duran, and Rusan, and we have Mr. Tom Lancaster here. And I don't know, Dr. Hampton, if you would like to add anything?
Yes, what I'll add, and especially for the new board members, each year we must have an independent audit conducted. And Wormer, Rogers, Rusan has been with us for over 20 years. And this is Tom Lancaster, who's now a partner. with the firm, and he'll be presenting the FY21 audit, so the end of last school year's audit to the board.
Thank you. So, as Dr. Hampton mentioned, it's the fiscal year-end June 30th, 21 audit. The audit was completed timely, and all required reports have been submitted by the required due dates. As in prior years, the district receives an overall good audit report. The district hires highly skilled employees in the business services department. To give you an overview of sort of what's involved in an audit. So field work was performed in August and September. This includes performing some testing of the district's internal controls and transaction testing. We test samples of expenditures, some payroll transactions, some journal entry testing, also some testing of the federal grants, which we'll discuss further when we get to the single audit. We do some testing of P-card transactions, and we also make sure that the district made the regularly scheduled bond payments. Involves testing bank reconciliations and activity funds. We make sure that the property taxes are recorded in a manner that's consistent with the district's levy. We perform single audit testing, which is required whenever a district has greater than $750,000 in expenditures of federal awards. The AFR, which is due every year to the ROE by October 15th, and then the electronic file has to be uploaded to ISB by November 15th, which would have been yesterday. Both of those have been submitted timely. And the single audit will be uploaded to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. That's due 9 months after the district's year end. So that's complete and will be uploaded. District staff were prepared and responded timely to our audit requests. The district accounts were reconciled timely, and supporting documentation was maintained in a way that facilitated completing the audit within our established timeframes. Business Services Department staff prepared detailed schedules that demonstrated a high degree of technical knowledge related to transaction processing, accounting principles, and federal grant requirements. The district properly allocated the property taxes to each of its funds based on the final extension. The district has been awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Association of School Business Officials for its comprehensive annual financial report, which you'll hear me refer to as the CAFR, the acronym, for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. And the district is in the process of preparing the fiscal year 2021 CAFR to meet the Certificate of Excellence standards. And by doing this, the district is preparing the most complete and comprehensive type of financial report in the practice of governmental accounting. And this will be submitted well ahead of, the due date for that is December 31st. It'll be submitted well ahead of that due date. So some specific sections, the single audit, you would have received, it's one of the smaller packages you received, it says single audit on the front of it. And it's for the same year end. So since the district had greater than $750,000 of expenditures of federal awards, that's a single audit is required. And to boil it down to the simplest terms possible, a single audit really requires some additional testing and additional reporting because of the threshold being met for the expenditure of federal awards. So on page 1 of the single audit report, we have the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting. The last paragraph on the first page with the header, compliance and other matters, the last sentence of that paragraph says the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government accounting standards. So in other words, no findings, and that's the best possible outcome to be communicated by that report. On page 3, that's the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major federal program. So again, last paragraph there, the heading is opinion on each major federal program. That's where it reads, "In our opinion, the district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above." So that's what we refer to as an unmodified or clean opinion, and that's the best possible opinion to receive for that report as well. Pages 5 and 6, that's the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this is a required format for this report, and it reports all of the expenditures of federal awards during the fiscal year. And this is what gets uploaded to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse when we submit it. And then beginning on page 8 is the schedule of findings and question costs. There are a few things listed out there. The most important is number 8 under federal awards. It says there were no audit findings. So again, no findings is the best result of having a single audit. And then under the number 9 there is it says the programs that we tested. So for the single audit this year, we tested the child nutrition cluster and also ESSER, which was new. Both of those resulted in no findings. And then you can see the threshold, Joliet Township High School District 204 was determined to be a low-risk auditee. Are there any questions on the single audit before I move to the AFR? Okay. I'll continue to kind of go through with a high-level overview, but if you do want more detail, feel free to stop me, or if I'm going too fast or anything. So on the AFR cover page, we can see under annual financial report, it's checked that the district received an unqualified report, which again is the best possible result. That means that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. On page 3, we have the district's financial profile information. About midway down, you can see where the district's legal debt limit is calculated, and that's based on a certain percentage of the EAV. And you can see at a legal debt limit of $234 million, with total long-term debt being at just about 80.5, the district is well below the legal debt limit. If you move to page 4, you have the total profile score. You can see with the total profile score of 3.9, that gives a designation of recognition, which is the highest designation to receive on the AFR.
I have a quick question for you on that one. Percentage of long-term debt margin remaining, we got a score of 3, which kept us 10 basis points under the max score. How do you get a 4?
I can give you the specific amount that would get it to a 4. I mean, it's, with less debt compared to the EAV, but I could give you the exact amount that would get it to a 4, if any could follow up.
We can send that, if you can send that to Dr. Hampton, we can send that out to the board.
Yeah, I'll make note to send it.
Thank you.
And then beginning on page 5, this is the last part of the AFR that I'll cover. So you can see we have the statement of position. So the statement of position basically shows the fund balance for each of the funds. And it goes without saying, the higher the fund balance, the better. That means the assets exceed the liabilities by a larger amount. So you can see the ed fund with a fund balance of over $56 million, operations and maintenance over $12 million, debt services almost $4 million, transportation over 18.5, municipal retirement, social security at over $6 million. But going down, all of the funds have healthy fund balances, showing the district maintains its strong financial standing and performed very well in the audit. So, does anyone have any questions for me? Other than how do I keep my glasses from falling?
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and then I just want to give credit where credit is due with Dr. Hampton and his team for continuing to lead us and keep us in a great financial position.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Hampton.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then our last presentation is Dr. Hampton with our 2021 tentative tax levy presentation.
So good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
Each year, the district is required to adopt the tax levy. So essentially for us, when we talk about the tax levy, we're talking about local taxes, which equates to roughly 75% of the revenues that we receive for our district. The district is required to have the estimated levy on public display for no less than 7 days or more than 20 days prior to adoption. So basically the way the tax levy works and what you see here on the screen and in the packet is basically the levy worksheet. And the way it truly works is it's your prior year extension plus CPI. So that's the way we receive those dollars. So your EAV, which is what Tom just spoke of, your equalized assessed value, is the assessment of all the properties associated with our school district. And that's over 3.3 billion of equalized assessed value, okay? So from that, there's a calculation that then determines how much is to be allocated for our district based on each fund. And in September, you heard me talk about each fund. So education fund, right? Transportation fund, buildings and grounds fund, bond fund. So each of those areas, there is a levy amount and a max amount of how much you can levy in each of those funds. But ultimately, the goal is prior year extension plus CPI. So CPI is always determined in about the second week of January of every year. So last year, or should I say this year, 2021, CPI is 1.4%. And the way that works is essentially there's what they call a basket of goods. So you always hear about, gasoline or eggs or whatever your consumers purchase. So there's a basket of goods that's compared from one year to the next in terms of price differential, right? And so with that price differential, that becomes what they call consumer price index. So now we're hearing a lot about inflation, right? So really this comes full circle what we're talking about right now, even in national news, where prices are escalating. And prices are escalating, and it's a little econ and things like that with supply and demand, right? So essentially, less supply, more demand drives the price. Right now, CPI is at 6.2%, the highest we've seen in over 25 years. So we see that though, right? Gas, right now in terms of even, with the holidays and you buying, your dinners and things like that, costs are up. So for next year's levy, we're projected to be closer to 5%, if not a little bit more. So essentially, when we start to talk about CPI, that's how we receive our dollars. So it's last year extension plus CPI or 5%, the lesser of the two. So let's say next year CPI is 6.2. We can't levy no more than 5%. So it's capped. We're in what we call a tax cap district. So essentially, costs could go up 10%. We're going to be capped at 5%. Costs go up 1.4%, that's what we're capped at, right? So that's the way the calculation works in regards to how we receive the dollars, in our district. Now, that's not inflation in the sense of cost of living. That's not inflation in the cost of just goods and services overall, right? Because we see healthcare increase 10%, 7%, 15%, but if CPI is 1.4%, those are the additional dollars we receive, right? So there's that balancing act in terms of how we levy, how much we levy, and where we levy those dollars. So with that, last year's levy, what we call non-bond and interest fund tax extension, $77,509,662. So the extension plus 1.4%, which is CPI, or it's an additional $1,085,000. So essentially, we'll receive last year's extension plus the 1.4%, plus now what we call new property. So new property is not realized until the spring of next year. However, the levies have to be passed by the fourth Tuesday of, or should I say filed by the fourth Tuesday of this, the end of this year, right? So we have to estimate what potentially new property is when we do our levy calculation, and then when the new property is realized, the clerk's office make that adjustment for the full tax extension. And so what we have historically seen here in our district is between the past 6 to 7 years, we've seen new property fluctuate anywhere from 35 to 40 million up to 90 million, right? So now when I do my calculation, I'm going to put that number over this 90 million so we can capture all of those dollars in our levy. You don't capture those dollars in your levy, you lose it forever, right? So that is part of that. So it's extension, CPI, plus new property. And so the district will be entitled to an additional roughly $2 million of tax revenues of new property that will go onto the tax rolls. Last year, new property EAV was approximately $90,610,000. So in my calculation and calculation sheet, it's over $90 million so that we can capture that. And in having the conversation with the clerk's office, we will still start to realize continued growth in our area. Over the past 6, 7 years, we've seen continued growth. Last year was over 5%. The year before was over 5%. We're projecting next year is going to be another 4 to 5%. And we're seeing that within our area, within the economy here in the Joliet area. So that's great for us as a district. So the district is proposing adoption of a tax levy of $81,380,000, which equates to about 4.9% more than last year. Knowing that that's going to be adjusted and knowing that that can't go over 5%, but it can't go over 1.4%, right? The 4.9% is to make sure that new property is in there, and then those adjustments will be made with the clerk's office so that we don't go over the 1.4, but then we also receive the dollars associated with new property. And I don't know how much you all might have followed these things, but years ago, this time of the year, you could see the local paper used to have these big black boxes, double boxes, and it was always the levy time, and that was districts and municipalities that were essentially going through this levy process, and they were proposing a levy over 5%, right? Well, you're proposing a levy over 5%, but you're not going to get no more than 1.4%. Because if you want to get more than that, then you have to actually go to referendum, right? So now you don't see that as much anymore because we're talking about a capped district and associated with that. So with that, another piece is the evidence-based funding. So there was a provision within the evidence-based funding that allows for property tax relief. So this is a grant that the state gives to school districts in regards to potentially refunding taxes back or lowering your tax base, okay? With this, it's $50 million they're allocating for the entire state. And that includes elementary and high school districts. We are roughly, of all districts within the state, which is about 852, we're about 480 in regards to that. 43 out of 97 for high schools, about 480 out of 852 for all schools. Essentially what I'm saying is the $50 million will be gone way before it gets to our district in regards to those levies. And those are calculations that's done throughout the state in terms of tax rates and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about that too, because we always hear about the tax rate. So you hear your EAV versus your tax rate. So the simplest terms is to put this is, if your EAV is going up, your tax rate is going to go down. If your EAV goes down, your tax rate is going to go up. And the reason for that is, and it's pretty simple. So if your EAV goes up, that means you have more taxing bodies to pay for all of the services within the area, so then your tax rate should go down. If your EAV goes down, which means you have less taxpayers paying for the same services, then your tax rate goes up, right? Because you're still paying for all the services that you normally would pay for. So it's always an inverse relationship. So it's a good thing that our EAV is going up because we have more taxing bodies. The tax rate goes down for everyone, so everyone pays less, right? So, so we see that. So our total tax abatement amount, if we were to be approved, is roughly $6.7 million. So I did complete those documents like I do every year, but I know it would never get to us as long as it's only $50 million, right? But you have to try, and we do our due diligence with that every year. The other piece to this is, and I want to just share this with the board, is the final pricing for the bonds that were sold. So due to the Federal Reserve meeting on November 3rd, Raymond James recommended moving the bond sale from November 3rd to October 28th because of the uncertainty of what would happen in the Fed. They wanted to get ahead of that and still take advantage of the market. The bond sale went well with a yield reduction of 0.04% on the largest maturity and a slight increase in yields on the smaller maturities. The all true end interest costs 2.13%, which is close to the 2.12% we discussed when the bond resolution was approved on October 19th. The total savings of the life of the bonds, $1,166,779. I mean, truly, Raymond James were just about spot on when they talked about going to the market and actually what we could save as a district. Per the resolution, I did speak with Mr. Edmond, shared that information. We gave Raymond James the okay, so the bond sale is complete. I went through a process with Standards & Poor's, Moody's. We maintained our rating, which is AA, which is great in this environment because a lot of districts are being downgraded, and we maintained ours, which helped in terms of obtaining a great interest rates with the bond sale. So that's great news. And I believe we have those documents to be completed and signed today. So with that, 2001 limited tax levy extension calculation is in your packet. The 2021 levy summary. Chart A shows the history of the property taxes, the rates, the extensions, tax collection. Chart B, you will see the equalized assessed value history and projections. You have the draft of the certificate of levy, and you have the draft of the certificate of levy by the board secretary, and a timeline for adoption. Estimated 2021 levy presented tonight. The estimated 2020 levy will be placed on public display tomorrow. December 14th, Board of Education recommendation for adoption, and by December 21st, which is the last day to file with the clerk's office, and I would have to make that filing with the clerk's office by that Tuesday.
want to say, being on, this is my second school board, you broke down the tax levy information better than anyone I've ever seen break it down. You should be a professor.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you. Okay, that concludes our superintendent report.
Thank you. We thank all the presentations, and Secretary and I are looking forward to signing all that documentation. We're moving on to our action items. Make a motion to approve action item A, approve of 2020-21 audit.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
B, approval of the 2021 tentative tax levy. Can I get a motion to,
I make that motion.
Second.
questions? I'd like to thank Dr. Hampton for the presentation. Can roll call, please?
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer? Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Have a motion to approve C.
So moved.
Questions?
I just have a comment. The timing of this is off, so I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. We got notice from Illinois State Board of Education in later October that there was an opportunity for some more flexibility in regards to evaluation. And so we worked with our union leadership, and I want to thank them for working with us so quickly to formulate a similar MOU that we had last year, which allows for the flexibility for this evaluation cycle due to ongoing needs administrators have and the things that teachers are being asked to do right now. So this is a benefit to everyone. We can continue to give feedback, and teachers who were in process, tenured teachers, have the decision of, do they want to stop the process? Do they want to continue the process? So the decision is theirs. But then tenured teachers, we modified it so that we can finish up with the one evaluator that they were assigned to at the beginning. So it's very similar to the MOU from last year.
Do they get default ratings then?
Yes, so the flexibility works the same. So if your last and again, non-tenured staff must be evaluated with a minimum of 3 observations. And if you're tenured, it defaults to your last evaluation. If you were proficient, and if you were excellent, and if you had a needs improvement, you still have to be evaluated.
And then if their cycle is this year, and they get that default rating, their cycle would be again in 3 years?
Right now, it's still 2 years. That goes through the evaluation review team that we have established, and they would look at the new legislation in this past, and that work is slated to start this semester.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Approval of D, approval of the evaluation agreement of the Evaluation Joint Committee. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Questions?
I just, again, this goes to Ms. Lynn's question too. We have a evaluation review team, and it is co-facilitated by 2 members of administration and 2 members of union leadership. So because we have this evaluation plan in place, we also came to agreement on the specifics within there. And so anything that we ever do with the evaluation goes through the evaluation review team process. And then if there is a change based on that team and joint committee, that then comes to the board. So that is additionally due to the flexibility with evaluations, and this also mirrors what we did last year.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
2022-2023 course addition. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
I wanted to share this. This is a new course for next school year. It's an elective course that would fulfill the English 3 graduation requirement, and it's clearly aligned to our work with Strategy 6.
I think this is very cool. So I'm very proud that we have this.
Thank you.
I think too, Ms. McDonald, the teachers that worked on this was really a teacher-driven.
It came from 3 teachers, so it's good work.
I think it's a great response to, current times. So thank you for having it and those teachers for coming up with this support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes. Get a motion to approve F 2022-2023 board school calendar draft. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
I just want to thank the union again for working with us. We did get their input. This does have a unique circumstance because there's new legislation for the election day in November that it is a school holiday. And so that was a new situation to figure out. It does include parent-teacher conferences and institute days, but we do have a school improvement committee that we plan to get together at the beginning of next semester to review the data from this semester to make suggestions on what our school improvement days look like for next year. So we would come back to the board with an amended calendar that includes school improvement days. But the timing of this, we like to work very closely with our sender schools, and so that our families share some of the larger vacation times together for the holidays.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
G, donations. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Just like to say always, in the spirit of my dear brother, there's normally here that talks about donations, that we thank all donation that comes to the district. So, roll call?
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve classified staffing request?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Motion to approve I, personnel reports 1 through 11. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
J, student discipline recommendation.
After receiving and deliberating the information contained in the hearing officer's report, the Board of Education is charged with deciding whether removing the child from his or her learning environment is in the best interest of the school. 2, what the rationale is for the specific duration of the recommended expulsion. 3, whether all appropriate and available behavioral and disciplinary interventions were exhausted, and whether the continued presence in school would either A, pose a threat to the safety of other students, staff, or members of the school community, or B, substantially disrupt, impede, or interfere with the operation of the school. The Board of Education must then convene into public session to formally vote on the motion to expel if the expulsion is the consensus arrived at during the executive session. I make a motion under case number W212 208 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
I make a motion under case number W212209 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Second.
Roll call, please. Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
I make a motion under case number W212210S to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement in accordance with IEP.
Second.
Questions?
Mr. Edmond? Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
I make a motion under case number W212211 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
I make a motion under case number W212212 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
So. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
No.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
No.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes. I make a motion under case number W212213 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022, placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
I make a motion under case number C212214, recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Unfinished minutes, dress code.
Yes, I said that I would bring back thoughts of how to address some of the questions and concerns about student dress code. And we will be launching the District Discipline Advisory Committee. We have our school safety and security forum on December 7th. So we'll be sharing information about the committee. That's an annual committee that looks at policies and procedures as well as interventions. And student dress code is part of policy and within the handbook. So that it should be handled, I believe, through that committee work. And so we'll also not only share information during the forum, but we'll also put information out to students and parents and staff who would like to be involved. And we can make a special notation because there's been interest in talking about student dress code, that if you are interested in looking at that, that would be something that this committee would work through in the spring. And that's an advisory committee, and then the committee's recommendations comes back to the board if there's a policy recommendation change for approval or consideration.
Questions? Very good. New business, the first reading of the board policy, parent organizations and booster clubs. First reading. Board reports. Well, not right now. We've been reporting. Is there any announcement from the public?
Yes, Mr. Edmond, we have one. Michelle Smith.
Just for knowledge, we normally don't respond back.
That's okay.
Understood. And normally like 3 minutes.
Okay, can I start? I am Michelle Smith. I have been a teacher at Joliet Central for 30 years. I am also part of the union leadership team on the executive board. I spoke a few board meetings ago when there was a lot of attention about safety in our district. And I'm here again on behalf of the entire staff and the students. And when I say staff, I'm talking everyone from our deans, teachers, counselors, social workers, janitorial staff, cafeteria, everybody. The biggest thing that I can say in my 30 years of teaching is that we've seen trends come and go in education, whether it's with practices, whether it's with curriculum, but something that doesn't change is children. Children are our goal, to raise them and to help them become the best people they can be. Communication is key amongst our administration, our staff, our school board. And if we don't all get on the same page, we're running in circles. Our security is doing a difficult job, understaffed, not having enough presence. We talked about training. We talked about today teachers being in the hallway. But we also talk about how much people can be expected to do, and I'm talking on a professional level as a teacher. I'm responsible for my students' well-being, their safety, and their learning, their emotional state. And we are required as adults to give them boundaries, to give them a safe learning environment, and to be known that they are cared for, and we will do everything in our ability to help them. And I would like to see more open dialogue on all parties, because as the gentleman stood up here and talked about security, well, security can only do so much as if our policies are being followed, whether it's with phones or dress code or drug use or tardies or whatever. And they all come hand in hand and work together. And staff are doing the best we can with what we have. And we're tired. And we're trying. And we won't give up. But there's only so much that we can do. And as we heard some people say, we're being told that this is happening and what's really happening. And please keep your ears and eyes open and keep reaching out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
No, sir. There's nobody else that's signed up.
You,
No, I didn't know I had to sign up. I thought it was gonna be an open floor for us to address or have, make a comment. I apologize for not knowing the procedure.
okay. Yes, come on. 3 minutes now.
Good afternoon.
Have your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Street. I'm a parent of a student that was just, he was up for expulsion here tonight. He does attend Joliet West. He's a member of, Brother to Brother program in Joliet West, and he has, a lot of other things on his belt, like works, volunteers in the community and things of that nature. The reason I wanted to speak here tonight is because I feel that Joliet Township has failed my son. They failed to protect him and keep him safe in more than one incident. It was documented, it was on video, and yet he was still expelled here tonight. I also want to point out the fact that I was glad that I sat in the school board meeting and had an opportunity to see, some security, points and issues and things, because after reviewing that video, I had some concern of my own as a parent, and I wanted to come here tonight and kind of see what's being done. I'm also aware, well, it didn't come to my attention until this aired, publicly about the violence that's been happening in these two buildings. And I just think communication and prevention, it should be our number one goal. That is key to preventing these fights. In the incident that just got my son expelled, communication was given to the school. They failed to get in front of it. They did absolutely nothing. And yet he was still, expelled here tonight. Prevention, communication. Communication was made. Contact was made to deans. This was known. No prevention. And we just simply cannot have that. I'm here and I want to say, we are holding these kids responsible. In this instance, my son was attacked. So I just wanted to point that out. He was attacked and yet he's, still being expelled. And I just want to know, where's the school accountability when the school had knowledge of this and failed to protect my son? I was not notified that it was a threat, and we're talking about hours here. We're talking about before this kid ever made it to the building, the school knew. It could have been different measures and safety cautions, especially, after that weekend we were coming off for 12 injured at a party, 2 dead. The threat against my son should have been taken very seriously, and it just did not. Self-defense, what do that come in at? If you're physically being attacked and flight or flight mode is kicking in because you're like, hey, hold on, someone is attacking me. Does that even play a role? You know what I mean? Like, you should have the right to defend yourself. After viewing the video, I had a problem with the way security handled it. I do not believe security handled it properly. Security approached the attacker from behind, which the attacker didn't see. And the person being attacked, head was down. So I don't even think, that was addressed correctly, because if I'm gonna get in something, I'm gonna make sure both parties see me and say, hey, a figure of authority is here. And that just did not happen. The cameras show it. And one of the points that the school made was saying, hey, security had this contained at that point, he could have stopped. Security did not have it contained, and the cameras show that. I'm here to say this, and I'm speaking on behalf of my son because this is his future. He's already, 2 steps behind. Let's just be clear here. He is a minority. He identifies with the LGBT community, and both events where Joliet West failed to protect him was behind some comments and, sexual preference and agendas, And I just feel like the school it's easier not to deal with him, with the different issues that's going on that he's facing versus to protect him. Again, both instances, my son was failed to be protected. I think the school board definitely need to come, everybody need to come with, consequences, but they have to be appropriate, right? I don't want my son to be a scapegoat for the school district because we have to respond to the violence, but I don't think the response should be expelling a 15-year-old kid, giving them a felony record. I thought the goal was to give them the tools to make better decisions and let them move forward and prosper in life. Right now, these kids are being arrested and taken to jail and given felony records when we should be providing educational tools and conflict resolution tools for them to take that along in their life. To be more successful, in school and as a member of society. I just want to say, it's just going to affect my son's life from here on out. He's not going to have the resources at an alternative school that he would have at, West that he attends. And it's very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate when a person is attacked and they've suffered the consequences. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. I just wanted to get that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, can I get a motion to, is there any announcements? There's no other announcements, right? Can I get a motion to dismiss? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.